Hello class. Today we're talking about effort values, or EVs for short, a very important aspect of competitive Pokemon. The first thing to understand is that each Pokemon has a total of 510 EVs to invest, and a maximum of 252 EVs can be invested in one stat. At level 100, if no other modifiers are applied, 4 EVs equals 1 additional stat point. Fully investing 252 EVs in a stat will grant 63 additional points. This was changed in Pokemon Champions. There, you can invest only 32 EVs in one stat, but one EV increases a stat by 1 point at level 50, so it's essentially the exact same thing, just scaled down. Everything I say in this video about EV mechanics will apply to the main series games and Pokemon Champions, but I'll be using level 100 numbers from the main series games for examples. So, fully investing in a stat gives 63 additional points. This is actually very unique in Pokemon. Almost all other modifiers, items like Choice Band or Life Orb, Stat Boost, even Natures, are multipliers, meaning they increase power or increase a stat by a percentage. A Choice Band will increase your attack by 50%, so an uninvested Hoopa Unbound will get 178 additional attack points from a Choice Band, and an uninvested Toxicroak will get 124 additional attack points from a Choice Band. EVs are not multipliers, they are a flat addition to stats, so if you fully invest Hoopa and Toxicroak in attack, they will both get exactly 63 more points in attack. This means that Pokemon with worse stats are essentially helped more by EVs. In a way, EVs level the playing field somewhat. A bad stat that is fully EV invested will increase by a much larger percentage than a good stat that is fully EV invested. That's not to say you should invest in your Pokemon's worst stats. Often investing in areas where the Pokemon is already strong is the best approach. But this flat addition of points explains why some Pokemon with seemingly horrible stats can hit surprisingly hard or be surprisingly bulky. Sableye is a good example of a defensive Pokemon with awful defenses that is massively helped by EVs being additive rather than multiplicative. This flat 63 point addition if max invested is assuming there are no modifiers applied to this stat. If you have a nature that boosts the stat, say Adamant Hoopa Unbound, fully EV investing will give a 69 point boost to your attack stat. And this makes sense, as natures give a 10% boost, and 63 times 1.1 is about 69. To be exact though, it's 69.3. But this won't round up. Even if it was 69.9, it would not round up to 70. Almost everything is truncated in Pokemon. Healing, hazard damage, stat boost, recoil, almost everything that involves a number will be truncated. Whether that first decimal place is a 0, 1, 5, or 9 doesn't matter. It always gets cut off and ignored by the game. The one exception to this are the moves Mind Blown and Steel Beam, two powerful moves that inflict 50% recoil on the user. If you have an odd HP stat, say 247 HP Blacephalon, the exact calculated recoil would be 123.5, but the game will round this up to 124. Other than Mind Blown and Steel Beam though, everything always truncates. Alright, that's really all there is to know about how EVs work. These mechanics on their own aren't too complicated, but applying them can be very challenging, and people struggle in many different areas. So the rest of this video will be broken up into segments, each discussing a commonly asked question about EVs. Feel free to look through the chapters on this video and skip to the section that addresses what you're struggling with. The first question I want to address is, how do I optimize my EVs for healing items like leftovers and damaging items like the Life Orb? The key concept here to remember is that everything is truncated. Let's start with healing items. Say you're using leftovers on Kingambit. The leftovers heal 1/16 of your health each turn, or 6.25%. With no HP investment at level 100, Kingambit has 341 HP. If we divide 341 by 16, we see that leftovers should heal 21.3125 HP each turn, which of course the game will truncate to 21 HP. And this isn't too bad, 0.3125 isn't much to round away. But let's say you don't need max speed investment on your Kingambit and you have 40 EVs left over that you throw into HP. Now your Kingambit has 351 HP. If we divide that by 16, we get 21.9375, and the game will still truncate this to 21. But if you invest just 4 more EVs into HP, you'll restore 22 HP each turn. Now, particularly with an offensive Pokemon like Kingambit, this might not be worthwhile. Taking 4 EVs away from speed may cause you to be outsped by something you would have tied. 4 EVs away from attack might make the difference between a kill or no kill. Even over the course of many turns, 1 additional HP point per turn isn't a huge deal. I see a lot of players try way too hard to hit these multiples of 16 or other similar benchmarks and make their set worse in the process. But yes, mathematically, hitting intervals of 16 on HP does make the most of leftovers. And this same process can be applied to other healing items. On a Pokemon like Poison Heal Gliscor, who heals 1/8 health per turn, multiples of 8 make the most of the Toxic Orb. Now let's look at damaging items. Once again, everything is truncated. Let's say you're running a Life Orb on Deoxys Speed. The Life Orb has 10% recoil for each move used, and with no HP investment, your Deoxys has 241 HP. So if we divide by 10, we see that you should be taking 24.1 HP in recoil each turn, which of course is truncated to 24 HP. This isn't great, being so close to that interval of 10. If you can't spare any EVs for HP, it's actually optimal to decrease your HP IV by 2 points, so you get down to 239 HP. If you use 2 attacks with your Life Orb, you'll have broken even, and any more than 2 attacks, you'll have more HP remaining than if you had kept your maximum HP IV. But Deoxys Speed is insanely fast and usually doesn't need full speed investment, so you probably will have some EVs to invest in HP. If you invest 32 HP EVs, that gets you to 249 HP. That means 24.9 HP recoil each turn, which is nicely truncated to 24. In the case of Life Orb, it's also extra important that you don't end up on a multiple of 10. This means if you use 10 attacks, you'll die, whereas any Life Orb user with HP that's not a multiple of 10 will get to fire off an 11th attack. Probably something will damage you before you use this many attacks anyway, but it does happen. I also want to mention moves like Substitute and Belly Drum. These are times where you often do want to be on an exact multiple. You want your HP to be divisible by 4 when using Substitute if you're holding a Pinch Berry, so you can eat it after only 3 substitutes rather than 4. And you want your HP to be divisible by 2 if you're using Belly Drum with a Citrus Berry. If your HP is odd and you use Belly Drum, you won't eat that berry, which can mean death. Moving on, another question with a very similar answer. How do I optimize my EVs for hazard damage? Like everything else, hazard damage rounds down. Stealth Rock, for example, deals 1/8 of your health if your Pokemon is neutral to rock. If your HP is divisible by 8, you'll basically be taking the maximum damage possible. This generally isn't something to worry about, particularly if this multiple of 8 lets you hit a healing item optimization. That's a bigger deal than Stealth Rock for sure. And same situation with spikes. 1 layer is 1/8 of your health, 2 layers is 1/6, 3 layers is 1/4. But you really don't have to worry about it too much. The only time I strongly suggest paying attention to hazard damage when it comes to HP EVs is if you have a Pokemon that is weak to Stealth Rock. Torkoal and Pelipper, for example, are very common weather setters, and it is very important that their HP doesn't end up divisible by 4. If your Torkoal has full HP EV investment, that gets it to 344 HP, which is divisible by 4. So if you switch into Stealth Rock 4 times, you die, and on that 4th time, you won't set up Sun. If you have 248 EVs invested, that's 343 HP, and now you'll survive your 4th switch-in and have 3 HP to spare. That's the difference between not setting Sun and setting Sun, which is often the difference between winning or losing. It can be even more important with 4 times Stealth Rock weak Pokemon, like Moltres and Volcarona, that your HP not be divisible by 2. These Pokemon usually use heavy-duty boots, but Trick and Knockoff does happen, so it's best to EV carefully in these cases as well. Alright, moving on to the next question, and the one that confuses the most people: how do I EV to maximize bulk? In this context, when I say bulk, I mean how well your Pokemon can take hits based on percentage HP dealt. So your special bulk is a measure of how much damage you're taking from special attacks by percentage, and your physical bulk is a measure of how much damage you're taking from physical attacks by percentage. Special bulk can be approximated by multiplying HP and special defense. Physical bulk can be approximated by multiplying HP and physical defense. This isn't exactly correct. The entire process of damage calculation has a lot of intricacies I won't get into that change this calculation slightly, but simply multiplying the stats together is a very good approximation of bulk. The key thing to understand is that they multiply. Special bulk isn't HP plus special defense, it is HP times special defense. This becomes very relevant when maximizing bulk. Now, as you probably noticed, HP is involved in 2 bulk calculations, whereas defense and special defense are only involved in 1. So if you invest in HP, you'll get bulkier on the physical and special side. So does this mean you should just invest in HP all the time if you want to be bulkier? Well, not always, but mostly, yes. Almost every defensive Pokemon will fully invest in HP, and if you have an offensive Pokemon with spare EVs, HP is almost always the right place to put it. But there are exceptions. The most significant exception is Blissey. With no EV investment at level 100, Blissey has 651 HP, 56 defense, and 306 special defense. So we can multiply these numbers together to get an approximation of its physical and special bulk. We get a physical bulk of about 36,000 and a special bulk of about 200,000. If we invest fully in HP and special defense, add 63 points to both, now we have about 40,000 physical bulk and 260,000 special bulk. Compared to no EVs, this is a 10% increase to physical bulk and a 32% increase to special bulk. If we invest fully in HP and physical defense, we get about 85,000 physical bulk and 220,000 special bulk. Compared to no EVs, this is a 133% increase in physical bulk and a 10% increase to special bulk. But what if we don't invest in HP at all and we put it all in defense and special defense? This gives us about 77,000 physical bulk and 240,000 special bulk. Compared to no EVs, that's a 113% increase to physical bulk and a 21% increase to special bulk. If we compare these options, the no HP choice would seem to generally be the strongest of them all. Now, that's not to say you should always do this just because it mathematically optimizes the impact. If you've built your team in such a way that you're confident your Blissey will hardly ever have to take physical hits, maybe the HP and special defense option is best. Or if your team has a lot of other special walls, maybe HP and physical defense is the right approach. But generally, the no HP and max investment in both defenses is considered the best Blissey set. This is because when you're multiplying two numbers, if you can add to one of them, you're always going to get a larger product if you add to the smaller number. So for a Pokemon like Blissey that has a way higher HP than its other stats, particularly physical defense, we can see this effect very obviously. Now you may ask, does this mean I should also put a defensive boosting nature like Bold on Blissey, since defense is lower and increasing it is therefore the most important? The answer is no, because natures are a multiplier. If you go with a defense boosting nature, Blissey's defense is boosted by 10%, so you'll take around 9% less from physical attacks. If you go with a special defense boosting nature, you'll take around 9% less from special attacks. That's all there is to it. Do you want a reduction in physical hits or special hits against you? They'll both be reduced by the same percentage. I've heard people say that Bold Nature is better on Blissey because its defense is so low, or that Calm Nature is better because it increases the special defense stat by so many more points. After all, 10% of 369 is more than 10% of 119. Both of these arguments are wrong. If Natures gave a flat addition of, say, 50 stat points, then yes, it would be more impactful in defense. But that's not how it works. I tend to favor Calm Nature on Blissey to boost special defense simply because Blissey tends to take more special hits than physical hits. You probably put it on your team to be a special wall, but there's no mathematical reason making one nature more impactful or better than the other. I see people make this same mistake with Assault Vest. They assume that more EVs and special defense are a good idea when using the Assault Vest, since the Assault Vest will boost them more. This is also wrong. The Assault Vest, like Nature's, is a multiplier. It basically makes your special bulk equal to HP times special defense times Assault Vest times 1.5. By the associative property of multiplication, we can arrange this to make the Assault Vest look like it's boosting HP. Now, of course, the Assault Vest doesn't boost HP, that would make it increase physical bulk as well, but if we just look at special bulk, this equation is perfectly valid. Now, most Assault Vest Pokemon are meant to take special attacks, so that often will involve special defense EVs, but there is no mathematical reason to put any more special defense EVs on a Pokemon with Assault Vest than you would on that same Pokemon without an Assault Vest. In other words, whatever combination of EVs maximized special bulk without the Assault Vest will be the same combination of EVs that maximize special bulk with the Assault Vest. Or at least usually the same. Due to rounding and other minor intricacies of the damage calculation process, using an Assault Vest might change the optimal spread by a point or two, but the difference is usually negligible. To show a concrete example of this, look at Hatterene. If we only look at special bulk, say taking a Shadow Ball from a Choice Specs Dragapult, we see that a Hatterene with 252 HP EVs and no special defense has just very slightly less special bulk than a Hatterene with 252 special defense EVs and no HP. If we put an Assault Vest on that Hatterene, the Shadow Ball damage goes down by the same percentage on both sides. They're still very close. If the Assault Vest was somehow making special defense EVs more impactful, then we'd see the full special defense stat take a lot less damage than the full HP set after equipping the Assault Vest, but that's not what we see. Now, back to this idea of investing in defenses over HP. Blissey obviously has a ridiculously high HP stat, but does this apply to any other Pokemon? Absolutely it does. Alomomola also has very high HP and often chooses to invest in both defenses. Some Pokemon without crazy high HP stats also do this. An uninvested Ironmoth has 301 HP and 156 defense. Not too crazy of a difference compared to Blissey or Alomomola. Booster energy sets will often intentionally not run maximum special attack, so the booster energy will increase speed. This leaves 124 EVs left over. Some put this in HP, but most invest into defense. One of the main ways to kill Booster Energy Ironmoth is with priority moves, which are almost all physical attacks. So even though you lose out on gaining any special bulk when you choose not to invest in HP, investing in defense increases physical bulk more than if you had put it in HP. Now let's discuss optimizing bulk when you only have 252 EVs to spare on HP and your defenses. As I said earlier, adding to the lower stat will give a more significant increase to bulk, and the vast majority of Pokemon have higher HP than either of their defenses. There are some exceptions like Toxapex, whose HP is so much lower than either defense that there is literally no reason to invest in either defense stat before HP. If you're running, say, a modest Assault Vest set with full special attack investment, even if you were 100% certain that this Toxapex would only ever be hit by special attacks, investing in HP would still be the right move. There are also some Pokemon where the best way to maximize their physical or special bulk with just 252 EVs is a mix of that physical or special defense and HP. If you want to optimize these Pokemon, the best practice is to generally invest to get the HP and defense stat close to each other, then try out moving the EVs between HP and that defense stat on a damage calculator till you get it just right. But both of these are fairly rare cases. With most Pokemon, if you have 252 EVs to invest and you only care about increasing physical bulk, putting all of those EVs into defense is the right move. And if you only care about special bulk, putting all of those EVs into special defense is the right move. Remember though, investing in HP increases both physical and special bulk. It's involved in two calculations. It almost always gets more value than putting EVs in defense or special defense. That's why HP is generally where you should throw extra EVs. If you decide to invest in one of your defenses instead of HP, you should either be very confident that this Pokemon is really mostly concerned with just special or just physical attacks, or it's something like Blissey or Alomomola where it has such high HP relative to defenses that the math checks out. And as I said earlier, this math is an approximation, so make sure you check a damage calculator if you're looking to achieve exact rolls. I'll link the damage calculator I use in the description. It's a great resource for me when I team build, and it can help you understand EVs better and verify for yourself the things I say in this video. Now for the last part of this question, I want to discuss maximizing bulk when you also need to invest in speed. This is a pretty common situation as well. For example, I'm a big fan of Stored Power Latias. My favorite set uses Calm Mind, Stored Power, Aura Sphere, and Agility with Terra Poison and Leftovers. I want this Latias to hit 288 speed so it outspeeds Choice Scarf Darkrai after Agility, and I want the rest of its EVs in HP and physical defense. I want to go max HP here. Even though Calm Mind discourages special attacks somewhat, I'd rather increase my bulk on both sides. So I have 256 EVs remaining to get to 288 speed on Latias and put as many EVs in physical defense as possible. There are two routes. I could go Timid Nature and 24 speed EVs and 232 defense EVs, or I could go with a Bold Nature, 128 speed EVs and 128 defense EVs. If we look at both of these sets, they're very close. Both sets hit 288 speed, but the Timid set has 2 more points in defense. If you're trying to optimize your EVs between two stats while trying to hit a specific benchmark, you'll generally want to use the Positive Nature in the higher base stat. But this rule doesn't always work, so try plugging in both possibilities just to double check. Now for the last question I see all the time. How complicated should my EV spreads be? Some people have almost every EV spread super teched out, points everywhere. Others have almost just every set 252, 252, and 4 somewhere. Which is the better approach? Well, in competitive singles, I generally favor simple EV spreads. 252, 252, 4 is often the best idea. If a Pokemon is a special wall, probably max HP and max special defense. If it's a speedy physical attacker, max speed and max attack. The main case where I don't do simple EVs is to hit specific speed tiers. Speed tiers are a huge deal, so I will often invest to guarantee I outspeed a certain Pokemon, then throw the other stats into where they would normally go. Hatterene, for example, typically wants HP and defense investment, but if my team is weak to Garganacl, I may invest in speed to make sure I outpace it and can hit it with a Psychic Noise, then put the rest in HP and defense. But as for these spreads with a bit of speed, some HP, some defense, some special defense, I think these are generally worse than simpler spreads. Simple sets dump all the EVs into what that Pokemon is meant to do, whether that's defense or offense, and that's generally the best. There are some exceptions though. Doubles formats often have Pokemon with insanely high usage, like Incineroar for example, which would regularly have 50 to 70% usage in tournaments in the past. It doesn't seem to be as popular in Champions right now as it was, but metagame trends often push doubles Pokemon to insane heights that just wouldn't happen in singles. Because it's so likely that you'll be facing this particular Pokemon, it's probably not a bad idea to have specific EVs to outspeed or get a KO or avoid being KO'd by this threat. The even bigger exception is draft. You probably have a very good idea of what you're going to face, so EVing to tank specific hits and outspeed certain threats by a single point, and no more, is a good idea. When there are only 8 to 10 Pokemon you might face, it makes sense to tech out your spread and get precise with it. Generally, if you have no idea what you'll be facing, most of the time you should just go with a simple 252, 252, 4 set. Max invest in the 2 most important stats, and as your likelihood of facing specific threats increases, it becomes more and more a good idea to EV for those threats. Well, those are the main questions I get about EVs, but if you have any other questions, feel free to leave those in the comments and I'll do my best to respond to them all. If you enjoyed the video or learned something, please consider leaving a like and subscribing. It helps out a lot. Also, keep in mind, optimizing EVs really isn't that big of a deal in the scope of competitive Pokemon. It's important to have a firm handle on how EVs work if you're playing at a top level, but if you're a newer or more casual player, don't stress about whether your EV spread is perfectly optimized. The moves you run, the item you hold, and the decisions you make in the game are all more important than having finely tuned EVs. And if you're worried that your EVs are really terrible, just check out sample teams or teams top players are using and see what spreads they run. Or check out Smogon.com. They've got tons of set recommendations for many formats. I'll link this in the description as well. Well, that's all. Class dismissed.